Welcome to Just Between Us, a podcast powered by the Corey Johnson Program for Post-Traumatic Healing in Boston.
Every week, we focus on ways to heal from the devastating impact of collective trauma on our world.
My name is Reverend Liz Walker.
My name is Jadelle Cummins.
And today we're going to talk about the mental health epidemic in our country and young people. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Gayl Swaby, who represents the mental health pioneers here in Boston. She's a mental health counselor. She's an associate professor of counseling at Springfield College. And she's a woman who is a healer. And so we are just so thrilled to have you, Dr. Swaby, first of all. Let's talk about this program. What does it mean? What is the Mental Health Pioneer Program all about?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be here. Part of our program started with two organizations. The first organization was the Boston Project Ministries, where we started off with a mental health ambassador program. I started off as a mental health consultant to their program. What they were finding was that a lot of their young people who were coming to their program were faced with a lot of mental health challenges, and they couldn't, get past their difficulties or their challenges in order to do the work or the activity or the programming that they were part of. So they were like, we need to be able to tackle this. So I said, well, why don't we provide these young people with a curriculum that helps them to understand what's going on in terms of their own mental health. So what happened was that through that program and through our partnership with the Boston Private Industry Council, we were able to connect with young people around it. Now we have reached out to many different schools around connecting with the mental health Pioneers program. So we have two we have the mental health ambassadors, which is, sort of like the basic kind of information. And then we have the mental health pioneers, and the mental health pioneers are the ones who are a little bit older. Their interest is really going into psychology or social work. So we give them more of an advanced kind of curriculum where they can now go out and teach others and be peer leaders to their members. So yes, folks can either through their school, through the Boston Private Industry Council, through the Boston Project Ministries, or directly through New Generation Consultants and Associates, which is an organization that I have founded where we do a lot of this work.
So say that again so that our listeners can understand exactly where New Generations Consultants and Associates. We are a group of Black and Brown mental health clinicians who provide counseling, consultations, coaching, and workshops around issues related to mental health and wellness. And we use a very Afrocentric approach to our work. Tell me, and I know, Jadelle, you have a question, but tell me a little bit about that Afrocentric approach. What does that mean?
Yeah, so a lot of our work starts with, looking at the person's culture and, their values, belief systems in terms of where they got that from, and helping them to connect that to maybe their ancestors and where their ancestors, are from. Some people know, some people don't. So then we begin to challenge them or help them challenge themselves, right? Culturally, politically, personally, in terms of where are these thoughts, these beliefs, and these values are coming from, and how is that getting in your way of your own wellness, right? So we don't want to take away from your belief system. We just want you to take a look at it and make some decisions about what do I need to let go of and what do I need to hold on to? Because if we continue to hold on to them, then we pass that on to the next generation. And that's the kind of work we are trying to do, is to make those to take care of those generational burdens that we've been carrying, and create new kinds of legacies that can help us along the way as we look at our own wellness and our own mental health.
How has the reception been for the youth? How has that been received by them?
I have to say that it has been received very well. And I think today's young people, it's a different generation that we're dealing with, and they are so focused on being well and their mental health. Whereas, in our generation, there was a big stigma about talking about your mental health, about talking about feeling, down or sad or having issues of anxiety. But now the young people today want people to know that they're not doing well, and that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. So they were so open to receiving the information and learning about different ways in which they can take care of their mental health.
I've been so impressed with some of the celebrity young people like Simone Biles and people who have spoken out about their own mental health issues. But what kinds of things do you see that manifest themselves? What kinds of issues manifest themselves among our young people, Black and brown, particularly with all that's going on in the world today?
Yeah. So a lot of our Black and brown young people are facing issues there's lots of anxiety that's happening for them. And oftentimes they're not aware of what it is. They don't have a name to put to it. They just know that they are feeling a certain way. And it helps when they get a sense of, the fact that, sometimes my heart is racing is more than just my heart racing. It's because maybe I walked down this street that something happened and my body's been triggered by that experience. So my anxiety is now showing up, right? And also, and it may not even necessarily be that. So part of the work that I do really talks about how young people are carrying the burdens of their ancestors or their parents or their family members that is not really theirs, right? So things like depression, feeling sad, not being able to wake up in the morning, or feeling a sense of doom, right? So those are some things that young people are facing.
On our podcast, we like to even hear a bit about your story and different traumatic experiences. How did that shape how you view, your work now?
Yeah. What really got me into this field? So I didn't grow up in this country. I'm originally from St. Croix, Virgin Islands. And of course, in the Caribbean, mental health is you don't even talk about that. You don't even say anything about that. It's about what's wrong with you. It's like you have no reason to be sad. I've given you everything, right? So my interest in mental health came when I was in high school. I was thinking about studying business, and our business teacher took us to the courthouse to see a case. And when we got there, it had nothing to do with business. It was a case where a parent was physically abusing their children. I remember the judge saying, well, the two children are here and we have our social worker. Didn't even know what a social worker was. But even before that, I myself experienced some traumatic events growing up when I was younger, not at the hands of my family members, but hands of people in the community. And that really took a toll on me when I left the island and went to college, because that's when it really hit me in terms of me experiencing the anxiety or some feelings of sadness and not knowing where it was coming from, right? It didn't make any sense. I was like, why am I feeling this way? Until, when I got to graduate school and got more into this field, that's when it really hit me that you've had some experiences in your youth that no one was willing to really see or hear. And knowing that, young people today need that older or that adult person to be able to see and to hear and to value their experience. I said I wanted to work with children and I wanted to work with young people so that they can feel as though there's someone out there who understands or who can connect with them on their level. So my experience, and I still working through a lot of those traumatic experiences that I've had, because they don't just disappear.
Right.
I may walk down the street, something may trigger it, and but I've learned ways of wellness, ways of taking care of myself when those things happen.
You talked about your own experiences a bit, and as you talked, I thought about my own experiences, because I have had a traumatic experience as a child. My parents both died when my brother and I were very young, and we never really got over that and handled that really well, and ended up with some behavior issues all the way through puberty and into young adulthood. But I wonder, is this trauma something that is only in the community of brown and black people, or is the whole world traumatized from childhood, or how do you look at the data or the statistics that brings it up to this point?
Yeah. I think everyone has had some kind of traumatic experience. And in our world, we call it the small T's and the big T's. How we perceive it and how we react and respond to it might be different. So for me, you and I can be in a car accident, right? And we were in the same car, we experienced the same kind of accident, and I could be okay, right? I could go down that street the next day, not much of an impact. But you, Jadelle, could go down that same street and all of a sudden you start to have heart palpitations because you perceive that very differently. You experience that very differently. Or you might have had an experience that was very similar to it that triggered it. So now and it wasn't resolved. So now you have a trauma on top of another trauma. And when those don't get, dealt with or resolved or talked about, then something else builds on top of it. And then so then now you have complex trauma because you haven't had an opportunity to resolve those past traumas. And some of the work that we do is really going back to that, if you can, that first one. And if you can connect that first one, then the others wouldn't have such of an intense impact because you have tackled the first part of that traumatic experience that you had.
Yeah, my sisters and I have had countless conversations about how we see our parents. So,
Yes.
It's like, so in my eyes, my father is one way, but from my sister's perspective, my father is a different way. So that just rings true to me in terms of we can all experience the same thing, but interpret it and receive it, and the impact of it be completely different. I know in your curriculum, you definitely help students and youth just in general understand the language of how to communicate to others what they're feeling. Are the kids now being teachers and teaching others how to, create their own language to make sure that they're communicating effectively with older people or just anybody in general?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes this so successful, is that the young people begin to not only receive the language that we're helping them with, but create language because they're with their peers more than we are. So they're also teaching us. So even though we are teaching them this information, basic around mental health and wellness, they are also providing us with language that they're using with their peers as well, as a way to sort of, embrace this thing around mental health and wellness. And what we have found is that many of these young people, which was partly my goal, is to go into the field of psychology or social work and mental health, because only 4% of the Black and brown community are people who are in the field of psychology. And now we are in the midst of this pandemic, and so many people are in need of mental health services. And what's happening is that they want someone who looks like them. And there's not enough of us. So my goal is to begin to get young people interested in this field and see where they can go, so that we have more of us who look like us who can help us.
is one of your greatest lessons that you've learned from the past 18 months? I think we are all kind of learning to pivot. We're learning what resiliency really means. We're kind of relooking at a lot of things. What about you, and especially from the perspective of what you see with the mental health issues?
My biggest lesson was one day at a time, because you can only be accountable for what's happening today, in this moment, in this time. Don't think about yesterday. Don't think about tomorrow. One day at a time.
That's beautiful.
That's
Absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Swaby.
Yes.
You got it.
For joining us for this week's Just Between Us. We really appreciate you coming on. And thank you to everyone who's been listening over the past few months with our podcast, but especially today. We want to invite you to continue to join us for these conversations. And then we also want to invite you to join us every Thursday virtually for Can We Talk? Community conversations on trauma and healing. And you can visit our website to learn more about our program and then also about Can We Talk, which is rpcsocialimpactctr.org. We hope you will join us for our next conversation. Until then,
well, I just want you to be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.